Hello everyone, today we shall discuss what is direct and indirect speech and how to deal with it. So the first point we're going to cover is what is it, then we shall look into what is the difference between the affirmative, interrogative and imperative sentences, and how to make this transformation between the direct and indirect speech. So let's look into that. So what is it? We have the sentence, I was at a rock concert yesterday, Nick said. Then we heard this sentence from Nick, and we want to retell it to our friend Amanda. So we say to Amanda, Amanda, Nick said that he had been at a rock concert the day before. So what happens? We transform this sentence, the first sentence, into the second one, and we change the verb and the marker of the time, yesterday. So, for example, we can say to Amanda this, we report this sentence Nick said to us, for example, not right after Nick said to us, because it would sound strange, otherwise Amanda would have heard it. We can report it the day after we heard this, or even a week before, or a month after this happens. So, what is the difference between affirmative, interrogative, and imperative sentences? It's quite important for us because all these three types of sentences are reported in a different way, from the direct speech into indirect speech. So, affirmative sentence. I was at a rock concert yesterday, Nick said. So he just conveys this information to us and he just states it. Interrogative. It is when we ask a question. Do you speak English? The stranger asked. So we're asking questions. And imperative, please listen to me and don't talk, the teacher said. We want somebody to do something and we ask them or we order them to do that. So that is an imperative sentence. So how to make this transformation? What order should always be direct? It is an extremely important point which we should remember. For example, if we look at the interrogative sentence, do you speak English? We can see that there is inversion. Inversion, it is when we do put an auxiliary verb do, then you as a subject, and then the verb speak. That is inversion. Direct word order can be seen in affirmative and imperative sentences. I was. I is the subject, was is a verb. So if it's put the other way around, then it is not direct word order. And in the case when we put the direct speech into indirect, we should always remember that the word order is direct. It is like in affirmative or imperative sentences, not like in interrogative sentences, for example. It is the first important point to remember. The second point, if the verb in the main clause, that is the main sentence, is in the past tense, then we should remember about the sequence of tenses. So, if we are reporting something about the past, then all the verbs that go after this report, after this verb, should be put into the past tense. So, if in the main sentence that Nick said to us, he said, I am at a concert, then we can say, Nick said to me that he was at the concert. At that point of time, we were speaking with him. Are becomes were, have, has becomes had, do, does, did, was, were. So Nick said to us that he was at a concert, and we can say that Nick said that he had been at a concert. So we are reporting it in the sense that we put each verb that we have into the previous tense, let's say so. Had becomes had, did, had done, will, would, can, could, may, might. Then pronouns also change according to the meaning. So these become that, those, because for the person who was speaking it was this, and for us now, and for the person we are speaking to, it is that. Here becomes there, now becomes then, today becomes that day, yesterday becomes the day before that day, surely, tomorrow becomes next or following day, 2 days ago becomes 2 days before, last week the week before, in an hour later. So, what do we do when we see an affirmative sentence in the direct speech? We want to put it into indirect speech. So we introduce it with such verbs as to say, to tell, to answer, to add, to admit, to agree, to explain, to object, to remark, to remember, to suggest, to suppose. So, I suppose that Nick was. Or Nick said that he was. Nick told me. Nick answered to me. Nick admitted that. And so on. If we have interrogative sentences, we can introduce them with these verbs and phrases. To ask, to inquire, to want to know. Or we can introduce it with phrases, I wonder, do you know, do you have any idea? So we have 3 main types of questions, let's say so. 3 main groups. The first one is general or alternative question. The second is a special question and tag questions. What are those? So, a general question is, do you speak English? Or alternative question, do you speak English or French? Both these sentences have the following model. We report it with such words as whether or if. So, the sentence, do you speak English? The stranger asked would sound like, the stranger asked me whether or if I spoke English. So, do is turned into the previous past tense, that is past simple, and I spoke. So the stranger asked me if I spoke. As we can see in the first sentence, do you speak English, in the direct sentence, we see the inversion, while in the second sentence we see the direct word order. And it is important to remember that after if there is no future tense in these types of questions, because we usually state this future tense in the main clause, not in the second one. It would be too much. Special question is the question when we ask for specific information like how many, how much, when, etc. And so this interrogative word, how many or when, becomes the conjunction that helps us unite the main sentence and the sentence in which we report the information from the direct speech. So, how many tests have you done this month? The teacher asked. The teacher wanted to know how many tests we had done that month. So, the teacher asked, the teacher wanted to know. That is the construction we use to report this interrogative sentence. How many becomes the conjunction that helps us unite the main sentence and the subordinate sentence. And then, have you done becomes had done. And also the word order is once again direct. Another example. When will my boyfriend phone me? I wondered. I wondered when my boyfriend would phone me. So will becomes would in the past sentence. Then, tag questions. Tag questions is the only exception from the interrogative sentences paradigm, as they are translated as an affirmative sentence. You wouldn't forget the rule now, will you? The teacher said to us. So the teacher supposed that we wouldn't forget that rule then. The teacher basically doesn't ask a question, they just make their supposition known. Then imperative sentences is the third type of sentences, and they are introduced with such verbs as to ask, to tell somebody, to say, to order. Please listen to me and don't talk, the teacher said. The teacher told the pupils to listen and not to talk, because the teacher basically asked the students to do that. Alright, that's all I wanted to tell you today. If you have any questions, here are my contact details and also a link to my Facebook page where you can always write to me. And thank you very much for your attention.